Hello, I'm Zachariah Bogart, and welcome to Let's Talk Sedalia, a 1-hour program dedicated to bringing you news about Smith Cotton and key issues shaping Sedalia, Missouri. Each week, we welcome new guests to discuss topics that matter to our community. Let's Talk Sedalia is hosted by Ron Tollner, John Meehan, and myself. Now let's kick off things with the Smith Cotton news segment, hosted by me. Welcome to Let's Talk Sedalia. I'm your host, Zach. This is the Smith Cotton news segment. I'm joined with Mr. Young today. He is the sponsor of Spiz, and he's going to be talking about Mr. SC. So can you just give me a brief description of what Mr. SC is?
Absolutely, Zach. So Mr. SC is our yearly male beauty pageant or beauty contest. It is set up like a traditional beauty pageant in 3 parts. We have a talent competition, we have a spirit wear competition, and we have a formal wear question and answer portion of the competition.
And how long has Mr. SC been a tradition at Smith Cotton?
So when we brought it back after COVID 3 years ago, former Spiz president Lauren Greepy wanted to bring it back, and she had done research through collections of yearbooks and stuff, and we have had some form of Mr. SC. It wasn't always called that, but some form of a male competition going all the way back to the early 60s.
Oh, wow. And can you tell us what the community members are going to expect when they come and watch?
Well, what our community who joins us on Thursday, March 13th at 7 o'clock in the Hecker Performing Arts Center can expect is a great time. We've got 8 gentlemen competing, yourself being one of those individuals, and you're going to have a night of laughs. Hearing what the kids are coming up with their talents, are anywhere between really cool and really funny to really enjoyable. So you're going to be entertained. The formal wear is always a blast for everybody. It's going to be a good time. It'll be money well spent and time well spent to enjoy it.
And what does it take to win Mr. SC?
So we have 3 separate judges. We try to always get a former Mr. SC competitor or winner, and then we usually get 2 other judges who have judged some type of competition, whether it be a dance competition, acting, something else. They're judged on their formal wear, their spirit wear, and their talent, so it's composite score, and we calculate all those scores up to determine a winner.
And what makes this year's contestants stand out?
Well, I think you've got a mix this year of newcomers who have never participated in it before, but also you've got, let's see, 1, 2, 3, I'm looking at 4 individuals who had expressed to me some interest in wanting to do it since they were freshmen. And so you're talking about young men who have been looking forward to, competing in this ever since they arrived here at Smith Cotton. So I think between returners from last year and the kind of the fresh faces that are going to be a part of it, it's going to be a great night.
And what goes into hosting Mr. SC?
Well, you mean for me? Or
yes.
For me. Well, believe it or not, there's quite a bit of preparation. My 2 Spiz executive members who are primarily running it, Natalie Wendell and Ashlyn Gurlt, I'll have a script. I got to know the bio info for each of the guys. I got to know what their talents are. I arrange all of the open-ended questions for the Q&A. And then in our 2 rehearsals, I am also kind of in one of those directorial type of roles, trying to give the guys direction, make the pacing of the night fluid and smooth. It's a lot. It's a big production that goes into putting this show on, but it's worth it.
What's your favorite part about the show?
The formal wear. Yeah. I think anybody who's been to a Mr. SC before will know the formal wear is always very entertaining. That's probably my favorite part. And I always like the choreographed dance routine that you guys will put on in between the formal wear Q&A and the judge's final announcement.
And how does Mr. SC benefit the school?
So in a number of ways. First, it advertises our various programs that the guys are representing. SPIS uses it as a fundraiser for SPIS, and then that money is used to buy spirit-related items, to pay for the Rivalry for a Reason shirts that we sell every year. It goes into all of the activities that we engage in to provide student support for our activities and for our sports here at Smith Cotton.
And do you have anything else you want to say?
I just want to encourage everybody to come out and see the show. Again, it's Thursday, March 13th, next Thursday, March 13th at 7 p.m. in the Heckert Performing Arts Center. Tickets are $5 in advance, and you guys will begin selling those tickets in the cafeteria during lunch shifts next week. You can come by my room right now, B010, downstairs, and I can sell them to you. They're $5 a piece in advance. At the door, they're going to be $7 at the door.
All right. And once again, when and where is this happening?
Thursday, March 13th, 7 p.m., right here on the campus of Smith Cotton High School at the Heckert Performing Arts Center.
All right. I want to thank you.
The community is absolutely invited.
I want to thank you for coming and talking about Mr. SC.
Thank you for having me.
Now, let's turn it over to Ron Toner and John Meehan as I bring you this week's guest program.
Welcome to another podcast episode of Let's Talk. I am Ron Toler, one of the co-hosts of this program, and this program is coming to you from the audio and video studios of Smith Cotton High School. In studio with me today is our co-host, Mr. John Meehan, and behind the scenes, you don't get to see this fellow, but he does a lot of work. It is Mr. Zach Bogart, who is our production engineer. Zach is a senior at Smith Cotton High School and is a participant in the Queen City Center for Advanced Professional Studies. Now, I know that's a mouthful, so we're just going to refer to it as CAPS. But basically, without CAPS, there would be no Let's Talk. Mm-hmm. So we are very thankful for their being involved in this process. Our guest today is Judge Robert Koffman, and I guess I should put a caveat in there. For the most part, retired Judge Koffman, but we'll talk about how he is and he isn't here when we get down the road a little bit. The purpose of Let's Talk is to keep you, the public, informed of news and happenings in Sedalia and the surrounding area. Hopefully, you will learn something about our community and the people who make this such a tremendous place to call home. Just a reminder, previous Let's Talk podcasts are available online and can be accessed through any means that you use to access podcasts. Just do a search for Let's Talk Sedalia, and all of the past programs will be available to you. So all of that said, let's get started with today's program. I'd like to welcome Mr. Robert Koffman.
Thank you.
Good
to see you, Judge. Good to have you here. Thank you.
So maybe to start this out, Judge, let's give a little history of yourself and where you started and how you ended up here today.
Well, I grew up in Moberly, Missouri. I'm the oldest of 4 siblings. I went to the University of Central Missouri State in 1972 to become a band director. And shortly thereafter, I changed to a business degree and the idea of going to law school. I graduated from Central Missouri State University and went to St. Mary's University School of Law in San Antonio, Texas. After that, I became a licensed Missouri lawyer, worked with the Woolsey Fixer firm in Springfield, Missouri for a short time before I was appointed Associate Circuit Judge for Pettis County by Governor Kit Bond. And I was in that job for 24 years. And I was appointed by the governor to fill an unexpired term of Don Barnes and ran for election and became the presiding judge of the 18th Judicial Circuit for the state of Missouri. Was in that job for a little over 18 years for a total of 42 years, 42 and a half years. That's the longest serving judge in Missouri history.
Fantastic. And that's right. I remember you and I visiting prior to your retirement, and you were fastly approaching that mark whereby you were the longest serving judge in the state of Missouri. You know, that's really an accomplishment.
Well, you have to go on young and not die. That's how that works.
And you managed both of them.
I did both.
Well, Judge, you left out a couple pieces that I know about you, and one of them, fantastic trumpet player, and of course
That's debatable.
No, you're great, and you left out your community service through the JCs locally.
Well, I did. That's where I met a lot of my friends here in Pettis County. Was joining the JCs back in the '80s, early '80s. They're still my dear friends today, and we get together regularly. We're going to do that this weekend for the Super Bowls.
Great, fantastic. Well,
Yes.
thank you for your service there too.
Let's you give a shout out to your immediate family.
I'm married to Doris Fry. She's been my wife for 43 years now. I have two children, John and Kate, who graduated from Smith Cotton. Both have families of their own. One lives in Columbia and one lives in Omaha, Nebraska. I have 4 grandchildren, 3 granddaughters, and a grandson. That's my family.
Mm-hmm. Now, whenever you talked about your progressing through your college years and how you eventually ended up seeking a career in law, that's a long way from music. What was the tipping point?
That's a good story. My freshman year and our sophomore year in college, I did an internship with the Missouri Department of Public Safety, and there were 4 of us, college students, who were doing that work, and one of them was the son of a highway patrolman who was infatuated with becoming a lawyer, and he started talking about it. And everybody in the room said, yeah, I want to be a lawyer too, including me. Out of the 4, I was the only one that ended up becoming a lawyer. They convinced me that's a way to go for a living. Obviously, you do better financially as a lawyer than you would as a band director. So that's the reason I got into it. And I changed my major and started working hard to get the grades to get into law school. Went to law school, which is the toughest thing I ever did. That was really hard, but it was worthwhile. I found out I did not know how to study till I got to law school, and they taught me real quick.
So when it's all said and done, obviously you were in it a long time. You quoted 42 years. So I am assuming you were quite satisfied with your decision.
Absolutely. I couldn't have had a better career if I'd have planned it that way. Something new every day. You wanted to go to work every day. It had its good sides and its bad sides, but it was very rewarding, quite frankly. You got to see a lot of different ideas in the world and see how bad some places are and how good some others are. But it was a good job to go work at every day. Great personnel. Just enjoyed it thoroughly. I didn't want to retire, but they make you retire at the age of 70. Otherwise, I'd still be up there doing it now.
You'd be still working on that record.
I would.
You would be the Red Shandish of Missouri law. So let's kind of step back and think about talk about the legal process in the state of Missouri. And I realize this could get quite voluminous, but from an overview standpoint, talk to us about the legal system in Missouri and the hierarchy of it. And if you were doing a presentation and even in front of students, let's say, and you were talking to them about the legal system in the state of Missouri, how would that go?
Well, it's both civil and criminal. Both have their procedures. The procedures of the criminal side are circumscribed by the United States Constitution and the Missouri Constitution and put limits on what you can and can't do pretty stringently. Civil is a lot different. It's a lot more open. A lot of consent stuff goes on there. I find it to be the most rewarding than the criminal side. Criminal side's pretty much the same thing all the time. Most of what I did when I was a presiding judge was criminal. I'd say 70% of it, maybe 80% of it was criminal felonies. And the rest was civil cases, torts, contract, car wreck, you name it, civil cases. I didn't have to do domestic because I did domestic for 24 years when I was an associate circuit judge, and I was glad to be out of that.
Mm-hmm. Now, when you say that would include situations like what?
Divorces, motions to modify, adult abuse cases, anything family law related.
So, Judge, I recall over the years hearing situations when you had the big cases in the news, like the OJ case. Although he wasn't convicted on the criminal side, he was eventually, I'll call it sued on the civil side, and theoretically, the civil prosecution is simpler to get a result for the plaintiff than the criminal is. That makes sense?
That's true, because the criminal side is proof beyond a reasonable doubt, and the civil side is evidence to convince you of the allegations in the petition. It only takes 9 jurors to find for a plaintiff in a tort lawsuit or a civil lawsuit. It takes all 12 jurors in a criminal case.
Okay.
All right. Different burdens of proof.
Now, I remember, again, looking back at your history here in Pettis County, of course, before you were presiding judge, you were one of the associate judges. What's the difference between the position and what they hear?
Well, that's different depending on whether you're in the city or an outstate. In outstate, there'll be a circuit. We have various circuits, 46 circuits, and in the outstate, a circuit relatively has 2 to 5 counties under the administrative processes of the presiding circuit judge. The presiding circuit judge doles out caseloads to the associate circuit judges and themselves based on the balance filed in the county. I didn't do juvenile. Judge Liston did juvenile because he was good at it. I appointed him to do it. Division 6 of the Circuit Court in Pettis County hears small cases and misdemeanors, preliminary hearings, and felonies. Probate handles pretty much probate, but does a lot of domestic as well. And anything that a presiding judge assigns to those judges, they will take up. When I was an associate circuit judge, I took it upon myself to take anything and everything I could get from a presiding judge so I could learn my craft as a judge. I did that not only in Sedalia, but in all the cities of the state. That's where I got my education on how to do things.
Mm-hmm. And you mentioned the other cities. I was going to go there. So, but before I do, once you were appointed as presiding judge, it was your responsibility to do all those things you were just referring to as far as the assignment of cases.
That's correct.
So if you sign one to a fellow judge, do they have any liberty if they take it or not?
It's all their liberty. I'm not the boss of the judges. I have power and authority to assign cases, but I cannot tell them how to do their job in the courtroom. They're answerable to the people who put them there. And if they don't do it right, the people will take them out of those chairs.
Okay. So what I was referring to, if John Doe is an associate circuit judge and you have 6 cases you're going to push his or her direction, do they have to take those 6 cases?
They can recuse out of anything they don't want to hear. They can do that.
I would assume, I mean, that can be a very bad word sometimes, but generally speaking, should there be something behind the recusing themselves other than
the Supreme Court rules say there should be a valid reason for doing that. Not all judges adhere to that. I get assigned around the state now as a senior judge into circuits where all the judges get out of a case because one judge has gotten disqualified. And for the life of me, I can't figure out why they do that, but they do it. They do that in the cities a lot too. And they don't have to do that because they have more than one circuit judge in their circuit, so they can just dole it off to another. But they generally just all get out of it, and some senior judge like me gets appointed to it.
Well, and I was going to ask you about that because, of course, I've known you for years, and I know that you were involved in a lot of trouble to other districts, travel to other districts to take responsibility for certain cases there. And primarily that was due to what you just said, that everybody in that particular county recused themselves.
They get disqualified in some way, and they need a judge to fill in on the case or cases, or maybe even a day of cases. And so the Supreme Court assigns various judges to go do those things.
So when that happens, you get appointed by the Supreme Court.
That's correct.
To do that.
That's correct. And then I will sit there doing what they've assigned me to as if I were a judge in that county.
So when, again, just going back to the structure of the hearings, trials, and so forth, I mean, I think everybody knows there's a jury trial and there potential, and there is a trial that's simply heard by the judge. What's the primary distinction of which happens?
Well, all civil cases are jury trials unless they're in equity. Then if it's in equity, the judge hears the case. But if it's a tort case, if it's a money case, that'll always be a jury trial for the people unless they waive it. unless the parties waive a jury trial, it'll always go to jury. On average, anywhere from 10 to 15 juries a year is all I did. But I did over 300 of them in 42 years. Some people think that's a lot. I never thought that was all that many, but jury trials are high court. That's where you summon the citizens to sit and hear the facts and apply the law as the judge gives it to them to arrive at a decision. Technically, that's all a court is a decision-making process between two disparate parties who can't agree on what the facts and the law are. That's all a judge should be doing. But a jury trial is a unique high court thing. Most of the work a judge does has nothing to do with a jury. That's usually just TV stuff. And TV is not the judicial system.
I understand that. And of course, you've heard that time and time again when you talk about programs like CSI and all of the science that's behind it. And it's amazing what they can solve on those programs.
The ESPY Awards is for scientific programming. And some of those shows you're talking about won the Science Fiction Award.
Science fiction, keyword. So I don't want to go too far back with this question. So let's say it's once you became the primary judge in the county presiding. What would a typical day be like for Bob Koffman in those situations?
Well, it will be a day that would have been established and set up with a list of cases months before. You go in there and sit down there, and it's a cattle call generally on law days where you might hear 217, 215 cases in a day. It could be anywhere from lawyer status, trial settings, continuances, resolutions on the record, things like that go on all day. Something different, you call a different case, and something different pops up on every one of them. And you do it until it's done. Because the next day you start all over again, and you don't have time to move anything to the next day, so you stay till it's done.
Mm-hmm. So based on what you're telling me, I would say that your assistants, your clerks, have a very important position.
Extremely. I had two very fine circuit clerks and their staff. They were extremely helpful and helped move things along. And if you forgot something, they'd cue you to it. You know, a judge is listening for certain things that affect the law in a courtroom. Court reporter takes down everything, is listening for something else. Here's things that I didn't hear. She would cue me sometimes about something's going on out here. You need to watch. Because we're all doing our little job. A clerk trying to keep the record, keep it clean. And they're looking at other things in the courtroom. So there's something different going on. A bailiff will be in there looking for safety reasons at different things. So there's a lot going on in a courtroom at any one time. Judge is only a part of it.
So Bob, in your 42 years, how much has it changed?
A lot.
Can you give us some big ones?
It used to be that it was all done with paper. Now it's digital.
Mm-hmm.
All case files are online with the circuit clerk's office. Now that comes with good and it comes from bad. When we first put that on there, I questioned the use of it because when I have those paper files, I got something I can work with in front of me. But if a squirrel chews through the fiber optic cable between here and Jeff City, the whole system goes down. And when they put it in, they swore that couldn't happen, but in fact, it did happen. And when it goes down, you get 200 people in your courtroom, and there's nothing you can do because everything's on that system. That's a huge change in the court. The way court files are stored, the way we communicate through Office of State Court Administrators, the way we communicate digitally and online is important. We can take pleas from prisons now over the computer. We don't have to bring them in with deputies from far away. We can conduct hearings on video. That never could be done before.
Now, was that a result of COVID, or was that happening before?
That was happening before. This has been going on forever. And every time we get it right and we get to where we can use it, the IT representatives of OSCA change it. We have to start all over again. Mm-hmm. That's going on right now.
You know, I don't think that's unique to you.
I don't
Seems
think
like
so
businesses do. Always changing.
Always changing.
So I know a couple of things that came to mind to me, and of course you talk about the change in court reporting, which is huge. But there's also organizations, people that help assist in law proceedings now that all that many years ago did not. And I'm talking about things like CASA, child safe. I would think you have a lot of interaction with them.
Not really.
Really?
They're just witnesses. They help people. They're social workers. I was associate judge doing the adult abuse when CASA came into existence, and I helped put together the child safe early on when it started. And they're merely there to aid individuals in accessing the court. They walk a tight line of being able to practice law and give advice, but their job is to give options to people on where to go for social services, be they the courts, mental health, custody, housing, all that stuff. They're really not part of the justice system or the judicial courts of the state. They're merely witnesses at times, but mostly what they do is they're operating before the case even comes into the courtroom.
So how would you say that the court's relationship is with all of the various law enforcement groups, be it the sheriff, the city police department, highway patrol, whatever? I mean, they're obviously involved a lot in a number of the things that you hear.
They're witnesses. They deal mostly with prosecutors. If you'll think about it, they do kind of what those other social organizations do. They investigate the crimes. They file the probable cause statements with the prosecutor in the court. And the prosecutor is the one institutes the cases in front of us, or private attorneys do. It's never from law enforcement directly. They're just witnesses in lawsuits.
Mm-hmm. You know, oh gosh, it's been a few years ago now, but I had the privilege, and I mean that when I say the word privilege, to sit on the grand jury, which was, I think, 6 months in length. Does that sound right?
That's right.
And actually, you, my dear friend, put me in charge of that group that time. But
it was rewarding too, wasn't it?
And it was.
And I told you it would be.
And that's the point that I wanted to make. It was a tremendous, rewarding process to be a part of. Also a very emotional process to be involved with. I don't care to repeat some of the cases that the prosecutor brought before us, but there are certainly cases out there that can be absolutely gut-wrenching because of the parties involved. And I don't think that probably surprises you, me saying that.
All criminal cases are human tragedy, all of them. But I've never heard anyone on the grand jury ever say they disliked it. Most people hate going to jury duty. There's two kinds of juries, a petit jury and a grand jury. A grand jury charges people. A petit jury decides the facts in a particular lawsuit. And people do everything and make every excuse in the world to avoid jury duty. But if they just stay there and do it, they'd find out it's rewarding every time.
Right. And I agree with you on that. And I was probably guilty of the former that you were just talking about until I had to do it.
Well, I had a guy that brought me, a friend of mine that brought to my office a doctor's excuse for not being able to do jury duty on Monday. And I had to tell him no because he played golf with me on Saturday before it.
Good for you. Hold your own, Judge. You know, communities are always changing, as is Sedalia. I mean, we have a lot of individuals that would have, I would refer to them as having English as a second language.
Or English not at all.
Very good. Good point. How do you deal with that situation?
The law requires us to have certified interpreters. I should say translators, not interpreters. They're not allowed to interpret what's being said. They have to translate exactly what is said. The state keeps a record of those, and we use those. But not all languages that are here have certified people who translate. For example, we have a large Polynesian community over in Lamont, and they have eventually criminal things before the court, and we can't find certified people who can do that. There are only 2 people that speak 2 Ps in the entire United States, and to get them on the phone in a court hearing, in the courtroom on a telephone is difficult at times for translation, but when you have a jury trial, it takes at least 2 translators at any one time in a jury trial, because they have to be 20 on and 20 off, 20 on, 20 off to keep their mind fresh while they do the translation. So some languages are so difficult to find people to translate. Fortunately, we've never had to have a jury trial on a Chuukese person, but that would be a physical nightmare if we did. But we have translators. Now, the state's not obligated to provide translators in civil cases, only in criminal cases where liberty is at risk. Civil cases, just money, so they don't do that. Or you bring your own person to sit there with you from your family and tell them what's being said. But it's always a problem. It's always a problem. But that's the best way we can handle it.
I remember one time when you and I were visiting and we were talking about the state Supreme Court. And, I mean, you've had cases that were appealed to that point,
Oh,
right?
many, yeah. I've sat on that court, too, by assignment. But, yeah, I've had many go up.
And I think, if I recall right, in visiting with you, you were always pretty darn happy with the results.
The only way a judge knows whether he's doing a good job is if he doesn't get overturned on appeal or if he doesn't get qualified by the parties on either side of the table. That usually is an indication you're doing what's right. Otherwise, there's no other measure to determine whether you're doing it right or wrong. I was pretty good that I had less cases overturned on appeal than I had years in the business, and that's about 10,000 cases a year. But maybe one a year, maybe two a year. But I'd even asked the Supreme Court to overturn me because I'd followed the law and found it to be unjust or unreasonable, and they would do it. I've had cases where I was overturned by the courts of appeal or the Supreme Court because they wanted to change the law, and then the legislature would put it right back to where my decision was. So they're not all straight up and down, you didn't do it right kind of things. But that's the point. Most people think that an appeal is the retrying of a lawsuit. It is not. It's to determine whether the trial judge did his job properly. That's all an appeal is. Did the judge do what he was supposed to do to get a fair trial? That's it.
What type of continuing education is involved for a judge?
Every lawyer is required to have 16 hours of continuing legal education, 3 of which have to be ethics every year. I get way more than that through the trial college and my association. But you're required to report that and do that. And if you don't, you get your license suspended.
So at the end of a case, and you've obviously had evidence presented, you've had different findings, objections, whatever, is all of that information open to the public?
No. Well, it is if you go down there and watch the trial. Evidence is never open to the public. Unless they see it in the courtroom, it's never open to the public. It's not a public document. It belongs to the prosecuting attorney's office and used for an application of a case. It may be used, it may not be used, depending on what happens. For example, let's say a charge is filed and they've got all this evidence and the guy pleads out. You never see the evidence.
Good point.
It's never presented. And it's not a public record until it's filed. And the public can't even receive it then because it's in the custody of law enforcement because it may get appealed. Mm-hmm. And you got to try the thing all over again and you have to have that evidence. So seeing it, it's not a public document. You want to see the evidence, you come down to the courthouse and look at the evidence. You don't get online and look at it.
Mm-hmm. So in all of your years of being involved in this now, and you've already said you've seen tremendous changes in the entire process over those years, what's your crystal ball say about things going forward?
I'm disturbed. The Supreme Court of Missouri is pushing to have judges become more like social workers than adjudicators. The problem with that is we're none of us trained to be social workers. We can't tell you what justice is. I don't know a person that can tell you what justice is. Justice to one side of the table is an injustice to the other side of the table. So the trick is to follow the law as it's written. Don't make it up. Don't change it. Follow the law. Because if you follow the law and apply the facts properly to the law, you'll get justice. If you don't do that, you'll end up with an injustice for one side or the other. To make you a social worker where you have to concern yourself with mental health and transportation and housing, which is what we're being pushed to learn to do, I think is a travesty to the profession of being an arbiter. I'm there to solve disputes from entities on either side of the table. Nothing more, nothing less. For me to get out there and start doing the social work on who should go to a psychiatrist or who should go to a treatment facility, it's beyond my ability to know how to do or be trained to do. I'm trained in the law, not in the social work. Social workers are trained to do that, and they can present that to a court, but the court shouldn't be doing it themselves.
You know, hearing you talk about that, the thing that comes to mind to me is, as you said, you're being totally upfront. You're not qualified to do that. But if that type of thing is pushed upon you and your fellow judges, I would think that it wouldn't be that unusual for you all to be seeking help to have you do that. And the thing that would concern me about that is a lot of decisions could be in the hands of bureaucrats
Exactly.
when it's all done.
I will tell you that I've had psychologists, psychiatrists, and social workers sit in my courtroom on both sides of the table and give me an opinion based upon reasonably accepted theories in their field, and they're 180 degrees opposite each other. In their professional opinions, they come up with exactly opposite results using their generally accepted proceedings. How's the judge going to do that?
Yeah.
That's not what we're trained to do. And it's apparent that they're not trained to do it either. Otherwise, I wouldn't have two people equally qualified giving me a different opinion. And it happens almost in every case. One side gets one, the other side gets one. Yeah. So I distrust that process of making judges into social workers. We're not. That's not what the place of a court is in any way. We're supposed to make decisions between people who are arguing with one another. Be it the state, be it an individual, doesn't matter what. That's our job. It'd be like, I explain it this way. An umpire, if he were like a trial judge being told to do these things, would look at a pitcher and say, Mr. Pitcher, you better throw a curveball this next time that'll help you out. What's the guy batting going to say? You know?
Good point.
And that's kind of what we're being asked to do. And that's, so when it comes to changes in the law and how we do our business, I find that to be a tragic one, and I think we're going to get horrible results as a result of that. So we're supposed to take into consideration, for example, I did a capital murder case one time where the death penalty was on the table, and you are allowed to show mitigating and contributing factors to the defendant. And I was getting a Little League baseball coach in there telling me what a great kid he was. What's that got to do with when he tortured and murdered someone? What's that got to do with the result that should take place? But that's where the law has gone. I don't think those things have anything to do with the law, personally. Maybe that's why they make us retire at 70.
There you go.
So for the guys that think like that.
As we wrap up here today, and I know you retired at the age of 70, but you're really not retired yet, as you told me. You're still going hither and there to assist in proceedings. When do you really hang it up?
Well, I can't see or hear. I will tell you, retirement's not what it's all cut up to be. It's pretty boring. So I get assigned by the Supreme Court to travel all over the state to do cases now, and I welcome every bit of it because it gives me purpose. When you're sitting in a job that's intense and you do it a lot of hours a day, and then all of a sudden it's gone, it leaves a hole. So taking assignments from the Supreme Court it doesn't pay a lot of money, but it keeps you busy.
And it keeps their brain functioning.
It does, and I get to keep my license that I work really hard to get. So
there you go.
Ron, I think you know that Judge Koffman and I had the opportunity to work together a little bit down at the courthouse. And Judge, I just want to say thank you because you were a very dedicated judge. And I sat through some of those cases since I was down there and seeing how you operate and how the court system works and in Pettis County and many counties, because now you're a chief judge, that meant a lot to all of us.
Well, thank you. I tried to do my job the way it's supposed to be done, the way I was taught.
And that's ending on a good note.
Okay.
We appreciate everybody's time and listening to this podcast. We certainly thank Judge Robert Koffman for being our guest today. That's a wrap for now, but we'll talk again.